It's Chinese New Year, and I think the rotating spirit animal of the pig is quite apt for the current year. Because here we have a Chinese gal who has the audacity to write an article for Huffington Post, no less, complaining about being one more data point to the white man, Asian woman couple stereotype. And of course, like most of these racist leftists, she unsurprisingly has zero self-awareness because she blames her loving partner for perpetuating the Asian fetish syndrome and yet at the same time does not register the concept of it takes two to tango. It's quite clear that her discomfort came from her own insecurity of having a white man fetish that she's trying to project onto her partner. She is the woman who's the chooser in society, and yet she has a history of choosing white men. And so do many Asian women, and what the stats clearly show as the tendency. Because she doesn't want to face the truth that, like herself, Asian women have a great fetish for white men. Not only so, but Asian society as a whole has a pretty big darn fetish for whites, especially white men, for several reasons. One being whites are seen as having higher status due to many white countries being the richest countries around the world. Second, being Asians have a great fetish for white skin. This is apparent as the color white is seen as something pure, holy, and righteous in pretty much all Asian cultures. And by the way, this has absolutely nothing to do with white colonialism. It has been the case for probably 2,000 years, way before Chinese people even knew that white people existed. And it's also apparent in Asian names, with names like white, snow, ice, etc. being extremely common and considered to be beautiful and desirable names. And this is even true amongst Chinese surnames. And white people not only possess white skin, they're also the most color diverse out of all the racial groups. They can have yellow hair, brown hair, red hair, black hair, brown eyes, black eyes, to variant shades of the skin, from pale white to dark tan. In fact, when Europeans first arrived in China, Chinese people did not call them white people, okay? That was a term that came into being due to the colonization of African blacks, that the whiteness of the skin immediately stood out between the two populations. But the whiteness of the skin did not stand out as conspicuous amongst Asians, as many Asians have very light skin. As you can see here, she has very light skin, and myself included, I also have very light skin, and many times even lighter than many whites. And you can kind of see that here. And at the same time, though, Europeans are so diverse in terms of looks, yet so obviously different from Asians. Chinese people also could not label them using other terms like yellow hair, because many Europeans do not have yellow hair, or blue eyes, because many Europeans do not have blue eyes, or even their ethnicity, because Europeans came into China from many countries that most Chinese people would not be able to keep track due to the language barrier and all, and yet all seem to have developed their cohesive European identity, which has been largely been developed by the time European colonized parts of China. So what to call these people? God, let's just call them ocean people. How's that? That's precisely what the term for white people was during those times. Yang literally ocean people, which is short for people who came from across the ocean. And eventually, during the Chinese nationalist movement, that term, Yang eventually became a derogatory term, similar to white devils, right? So after that term is no longer deemed as acceptable or polite to call people of European descent, the Chinese settled for the next closest. Let's just all call them foreigners. How's that? Make it easy on our brain, right? So if you ever wonder why Chinese people now use that term to exclusively refer to white people, and this is even true for Chinese immigrants residing in white countries, to refer to the native white population, as absurd as that sounds, you can check out a YouTube video linked below on this. Now you know the reason. And of course, there's a third reason why Asian women have a fetish for white men, and it's quite a big one. It's because white men came from a cultural heritage of romanticism, of chivalry. And actually, you can clearly see it here too from the way she describes her fiance. She wouldn't be considered a woman of marriageable material in the Asian culture. If she dates an Asian man, even if the guy just loves her to death and is willing to be a cuck like this white dude, his family, his parents wouldn't be okay with it. Especially if the Asian guy is as successful as this white guy here. They would most likely tell him something along the lines of, you know what, you can find a better deal than this bitch, okay? Because unlike Western families, Asian families stick together and parents and grandparents have enormous power and influence over the choice of career, of marriage that their sons or daughters will take. She would be introduced to the family and then would be judged by them, and she wouldn't pass from the way that she treats her future husband. She would be expected to be gentle, to be supportive, to be submissive even, not a fucking racist cunt. She chose the white man precisely because he's willing to be the cuck slave with no baggages, no judgment that she would have to suffer through. She would be given all the power in the relationship. This is what she wants. And now she's feeling bad about being a fucking race traitor. So what better way to get rid of the guilt than to go with the mainstream heterosexual cisgender white male bashing? She could not make it any more clear here when she mentioned that she wishes that he was her gay friend or if the genders and race were reversed. Newsflash, hon, you wouldn't approve of an Asian guy dating a white woman. Your first instinct is going to accuse the dude of being a race traitor because you want all the power. You want to be desirable by both Asian men and white men alike, but you can only get one. And soon, when enough white men are red-pilled, you would get zero. And that's what's scaring you. That's what's making you so uncomfortable. Well, deal with it, bitch, and enjoy that extra size just a bit longer. Happy Year of the Pig.